gents, I'm back. It's been a long break, a much needed break. I'm doing a lot of work behind the scenes, resetting up a purpose-built studio for YouTube videos. Throughout 2025 is going to be my big year, hopefully to bring you some live streams with watch-alongs and such like. But I just want to clear up and wrap up some things that should have been done. The 2024 driver ratings, yes, the averages, the worst to best. Some guys I never expected to see racing 24 on the list, and a couple of guys that just absolutely smashed it out of the park. Number one is a big surprise for me, but let's start with the guys first that actually didn't complete all 24 races. I'm going to put them in sort of slightly separate categories to the guys that did. First of all, Jack Doohan, he literally just did one race in Abu Dhabi, took over the seat of Ocon. Not much expected from him, not much delivered, but 25 is a big year for him. We've got Colapinto just waiting in the wings, isn't he? And an awful lot of pressure in him. But he did one race, he got 4 points an average, well, just one race for that. Next up is Ollie Berman. He got an average of 7 over 3 races, so just slightly subcategorizing these two before we get into the next lot. He drove for Ferrari in Saudi and then for Haas in Baku and Brazil. Saudi was an absolutely brilliant drive from him, really pushed him onto what probably got him the seat for 25. Also when he stepped in Baku, I gave him a 9 out of 10 for that race. He drove brilliantly well. Brazil didn't go too well, but it was a really tricky race with the weather conditions, so really probably would have helped with his experience driving in the mixed conditions. Anything can happen. It was a tricky event for even the most experienced of guys, that one. So yes, you know, absolutely brilliant races from him. Got him in the race seat. His campaign in the junior category didn't go too well, but he absolutely did a job when he got given a Formula 1 car. So really excited to see what he can do next season that he's got a seat. And then we've got Logan Sargent, who did 15 races, just a 2.93 an average. He was, well, it was a mistake keeping him in that seat last year, wasn't it? He shouldn't have kept that seat. He really struggled. He had big crashes. The momentum from last year of just being poor continued. Despite all the best efforts from the Williams team, I don't think if you're a Sargent fan that you can really criticise Williams for the job that they did in trying to just do everything they could to just make it work for him. Yes, he bought big sponsor monies and probably one of the reasons he kept in that seat for as long as he did, but yeah, it was really poor from him. Liam Lawson next up. He just did 6 races but an average of 4.6 from him. The surprise for me is that he got the seat ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull, who I thought was brilliant. And actually he's got Colapinto's got a better average than him, and that was a bit of a surprise. And yet he's got a Red Bull seat on the back of his performances. I think it was his one lap pace, his aggression. He just seems to have a real solid head on him, and I think that was the big one. He went up against Fernando Alonso, you know, really irked a few of the big guys, and really I think it was his metal up there in his head. Red Bull thinking he's got an awful lot of potential, probably more than Yuki has shown, and that's why they're giving him a seat. But really that's what the Red Bull junior team is there for, and to build that and then go into the big seat. But it's a tall order going up against Max Verstappen next season. But yeah, this season just an average of 4.66, so a mixed bag of races, shown some real good speed. His racing wheel to wheel is really good, and I'm really excited to see what he can do next season. Up ahead of him, Franco Colapinto, the star for me of 25 of these young guns that just got up and got a seat. An average of 5.5 in 9 races. Very impressive. Early doors, you know, he absolutely did a brilliant job. I, for one, was the one that was really questioning this move from Williams, getting rid of Sargent and bringing in another junior. Just really questioning whether this was really a big mistake from them. But wow, did he prove everybody wrong. He only issue that where there was talks of potentially a new seat and seemed like a little bit of pressure got onto him. He had some massive crashes, didn't he, and really costly crashes to the Williams team, who had far too much damage expenses to cover last season. He didn't help that cause much at all, but one thing that you can't teach is raw speed, and this boy has got it. Alpine have done a brilliant job of signing him up as a reserve driver, and that's why I said earlier that, you know, Jack Doohan in that Alpine seat has got an awful lot of pressure on the back of him, because he's got this young guy that everybody knows had a lot of hype last season, going into 25, just sat there on his shoulders waiting, twiggling his thumbs for a drive. So it'll be really interesting to see how that one pans out. Next up is then Daniel Ricciardo. He only lasted 18 races only. He got a fair chunk of the season, didn't he? Averaged just 5.83 over the whole campaign for me, replaced by Liam Lawson. Not really a surprise. The Daniel Ricciardo that we all know and loved in the racing sense just seemed to have disappeared. Red Bull did all they could to sort of help revive him, do everything they could to get that Daniel Ricciardo that they know back. He's massively marketable, an unbelievable character, and he left everything on the table. The sad thing is just the way that it was all left at the end of the season with that whole announcement was just an absolute shambles. We couldn't give the hero the real, warm goodbye and farewell that he deserved. It's going to be a real loss of character on the grid next season, and probably here on, I think that's his time up in Formula 1. He pretty much said so. I think he's just really lost that little touch and feel, hasn't he? And just really struggled throughout last season, which was a real shame to see. And then we'll get on to the guys that completed all 24 races, and surprise, not. Sergio Perez, bottom of the list. He averaged, just 3.41 in that car. He had an absolutely shocking season. Started off well. The Red Bull was massively superior in the first 3 or 4 races, but from there on, Sergio just absolutely dropped off massively. The contract was a huge mistake, came back to bite Red Bull in the bum in the end, and they've probably had to pay him off to just release him out of that contract, because there was just no way that he could keep that seat. Red Bull, even Helmut Marko saying as much that he cost them, the constructors, because when you've got one guy bringing in so many points, and he was nearly 150 points plus off Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship in the end, and there was just absolutely no way that he could keep that seat. Will he be back? Now that is the big question. For me personally, I just don't think so. I just don't think he's done enough over the last 2 years. I know last year was particularly bad, but the last past Miami from 23 he was really poor as well, so can't really see a way back from him, but there is potentially that we could see him in the Cadillac seat. A South American with a young American driver in an all-American team will, sounds brilliant. Big sponsor money. Sergio comes with good sponsors. Rumours are that was the reasons that one of the reasons that kept him in that seat. But sad to see him go a little bit. He on his day he's absolutely fantastic, raw, aggressive, brilliant driver. But he just lost his spark, didn't he? Then following him, Lance Stroll, big surprise again, not 4.37 average rating, another season, and still nothing I can say for why he's still got this seat. Why does he deserve a race seat? And I still can't answer that question to say, apart from, Daddy Big Bucks holding him up and keeping him in that seat. There's no real anything that he's shown to say he deserves a seat and he's the man to do anything. He's very average at best. Canada was the only good race that I could think of that he drove last season, and so he's got an awful long way to go, but he keeps his seat for next season. Honestly, I just think his time's numbered. It's a matter of time since anybody else or any other big sponsors sort of say, come on mate, give this seat up now, let some other young guy have a go, and that might have some real pace and put that Aston Martin further forward or more closer to Fernando Alonso at least. Then 16th place, Alex Albon with a 4.5 rating average over the season. I think it's been a horrible campaign from him. He had far too many DNFs, 5 in a row at one stage, and that was probably why he's got such a low average rating. The races that he did, he just had some really good races in Monza and Baku, and then when Colo Pinto came onto the scene, he seemed to just be a little bit ragged, didn't he? He seemed to lose it a little bit. That he actually finally had a teammate that was actually putting him under some pressure, because for all the world, Alex Albon came into that team, no pressure most race weekends, and knew he had the beating of his teammate and he'd look good. He did pull off some good performances. I know he's not that naive to just sort of say, yeah, I'm beating my teammate, that's enough. especially looking at what he's doing. But overall, I think not the best campaign from Alex Albon, but he's shown in some races what a talent he is. And next season, I can't wait to see him up against Carlos Sainz in that Williams. Yeah, just looking forward to that next time out. Ahead of him, surprisingly, Zhou Guanyu, 4.55 average rating, and well, he started well, a night in Bahrain for him, and then it's hard to judge Zhou Guanyu because that Sauber was absolutely shocking, wasn't it? The wheel kept getting stuck, they were slow, but barely any upgrades. But then the big point came, didn't it? The big one in Qatar when he drove and got that team a point. Shame it wasn't double points for that race because Valtteri Bottas just missing out after Norris pipped into that in the end. But back to Zhou, lost his seat. Not really surprising. Like I say, it was really hard to judge because was he just bad racing or was he just too slow? Valtteri Bottas also struggled in that car, so it looks more car than driver. But for next season, he's got himself a Ferrari reserve seat, so keeps his brain engaged in F1, keeps his head to the floor, does well in that, and potential could he find a way back into Formula One as a permanent race seat. Over the years that he's been given, I honestly, with the young guys coming up, unless one of them goes disastrously wrong. I just see he'll be out of Formula One going forward now. But there's many other, series and championships that we probably see him in going forward. 14th place, Ocon, a 4.79 rating, one of his worst seasons, I think, personally. He just seemed to be all over the show, ragged. He lost it with the team. All that sort of went off downhill, never got on top of the car. Brazil was absolutely outstanding for him to pull off on the podium when it counts. Shows the talent that this boy's got, but it just never really came to the fore, and it's probably too late. The damage was done within the Alpine team anyway. The real sad thing was here that he never got to complete the campaign. He was eager to just move on to his new team Haas for next year and do the test. Alpine wouldn't have let him do that if he drove for them in the last race, so a deal was sort of cut there. But it was a shame really, because he'd pulled off an absolutely brilliant podium for him, and to just give him the boot at the end just sort of shown how sour that relationship went in the end. But he's got Haas next. Interesting to see how he does there. Bottas next up, 4.95 rating, and well, despite 0 points, he got better average scores than Zhou Guanyu. Really unlucky in Qatar and Abu Dhabi, where he just missed out on points. In Abu Dhabi, he was retired on lap 30, but was in the points, looking good for his final race, and he had qualified really well, didn't he? A P9 start there, so potentially looking out for some points. No seat for 25, but Valtteri Bottas has said, "I'll be back." He's given a Mercedes reserve seat there. He'll be, again, keeping his fingers in the loop of Formula One, and he, again, probably like other drivers that have not got a seat for 25, looking at 26 when this Cadillac joins. A lot of people sort of saying Valtteri would be the perfect fit for them. A fast racer, reliable, a perfect second or driver combo, works well with young guys. So got a lot of talent, worked with the big guys, so can bring an awful lot to a new team. And is that really what he's holding out for? Be interesting to see what he does, but yeah. Not a great campaign for Bottas. First time he's got 0 points, so not surprised to see him that low down on the averages. 12th place, Kevin Magnussen. He averaged 5.27 over the whole season. He had a very good start to the season, and then some questionable driving. We've seen that, blocking, holding up, got huge points on his license. Actually costly in the end, because he ended up getting enough points that got him a race ban, is why he was out of the car in Brazil. But yeah, really disappointing campaign from him. It just sort of withered out in the end. Mexico was probably his best race, and yeah, no seat for 25. He said his farewells. I think that's the end of Kevin Magnussen in Formula 1 at least. Probably see him in other series, no doubt. But he said his farewells, didn't he, at the end, and he sort of realised that his time up is gone. He had some time away and then came back and got this hot seat and actually drove really, really well. Was a really good teammate for Nico Hülkenberg. There's no questioning that, especially what he did and how he did it to, you know, just help the team with some points. But yeah, farewell Kevin Magnussen. 11th place, Yuki Tsunoda, and I think this was one of his better campaigns. Average 5.37, so just 0.1 better than Kevin Magnussen. It's been a mixed season, but he's absolutely hammered his teammates, hasn't he, for most of the season. He got the better of Daniel Ricciardo, and I think overall, I think he was probably just better than Liam Lawson also in the end. Some good races, but then the drop-offs were big, and then he just picked up some, you know, big crashes. His future at Red Bull or Racing Bulls is actually under question as well, wasn't it? Christian Horner saying, well, this guy has been good, but probably they just don't feel good enough to get up into the program, into the race seat, and this is a young driver's sort of seat, isn't it? Getting them warmed up, and how long can they keep Yuki in there if they don't feel like he's got a long term to go forward and into the big team? So yeah, sort of putting it out there that probably the last time we see Yuki in a Racing Bull, so a lot of pressure on him this season to show he's got what he's got and potentially try and nick a seat for 26. It'd be really, really sad. An absolutely brilliant character seat if we lose him also at the end of this campaign. So a lot of pressure on Yuki. He performed well under pressure last year. He really calmed down the angry man that we heard over the radio, which I absolutely love personally. I absolutely love that about him. Just really wears his heart on his sleeve in the race car, tells it how it is. But yeah, with this new fine system that's coming up, he'd probably be the first one to get a race ban with all the swearing that comes out of his mouth, isn't it? But yeah, let's see how it goes for Yuki, but not the best, really. A mixed campaign. It's hard to say because he's actually beat his teammate. That's what he's done. That's his job. But I think there were just some sort of errors, mistakes. He had some really sloppy races. He just needs to sort of kick on and move on from that. Consistency will be the key word for him in 25. Pierre Gasly up in 10th place at 4.45. The car was absolutely nowhere early on, but then from Monaco to Austria, he was absolutely brilliant, wasn't he? He did an absolutely tremendous job from there on. And at the end of the season, he was on it. Absolutely took apart Ocon from there onwards. Followed him home on the podium, which was a really, really good result for the team. And from there on, the races, the way he held on in Abu Dhabi again to keep that 6th place when he had a Haas hounding him down right at the end, drove an absolutely brilliant race from there. So yeah, an absolute credit to him and the team. He came on so strong, so good at the end. Bring some light for Alpine, who were absolutely disastrous. Never really deserved that 6th place in the Constructors, but they did it with that brilliant podium result in Brazil. And from there on, Ocon just did absolutely all in his powers to keep that, and he actually did a really, really good job in the end. 9th place, Fernando Alonso, 6.08. He is Aston Martin, isn't he? Early promised some good races and then some real blows, isn't it? Austria was, yeah, I gave him a 2 in that race. At the end of the season, he found his mojo again. We found Fernando Alonso again. Newey, Alonso, that sort of really gave him that boost, didn't he? And I really hope he keeps that seat all the way through to 26, where he gets to actually drive a proper Newey car, doesn't he? But for this season, mixed bag. It was a shame to see him lose. That's the first time I've seen Fernando Alonso partway through the season just sort of lose his fire a little bit. Yes, he's an old man and he's probably, you know, there's other things in life, but this guy's an absolute credit to F1. A brilliant racer. Really looking to see what he can do with Newey on his side. And big bucks spent in that Aston Martin outfit. 25 should be a good one, hopefully, for him. 8th place, Nico Hülkenberg, 6.33 average, and he had a very, very, very good season. Austria, the British Grand Prix were real highs for him. Will he regret going to Sauber? Most definitely there would have been some regrets when he looked at what happened. The guy that actually got him the seat, Andrew Seidel, lost his seat position in the team, kicked out, and then he's got... The only promise here is that he's got Matteo Binotto from Ferrari in there, and they've stolen Jonathan Wheatley from Red Bull as well as an in-house team principal there. So they are picking up some brilliant talent there for Audi when they turn that into 26. Really, that's what he's gone for. They were picking that lineup for 26 now just to get them embedded and really like hit the ground running in 26. So he's pretty much guaranteed a seat at least up until then, but he really deserves it. He was absolutely tremendous. Really disappointing that they lost out 6 constructors in the constructors with Haas, but he was absolutely phenomenal for much of the season. His qualifying performances was tremendous. He really just outdid that car so many times. A brilliant job from him in 24. 7th place, Lewis Hamilton, 6.41, and was this his worst season yet? Question for you guys, let me know in your comments your thoughts on that one. But yeah, he was hammered by George Russell in qualifying. He just could never ever get it together. He did say afterwards at the end of the season that joining Ferrari and then, you know, having a whole season with still Mercedes, probably wasn't the best timing to have that sort of big signing and that new future ahead right at the beginning of a campaign. You know, now it's probably in Italy, Monza, somewhere like that would have been absolutely brilliant, but it just didn't pan out that way. He did say it didn't help and it strained his relationship with Mercedes, although it probably shouldn't have. And he held his hands up to that, fair play to him. And yeah, it kind of showed in his driving, but then it came good with a brilliant mid-season win in Silverstone. He got the win in Belgium really just by default of George Russell going off, but he, you know, got his car in 2nd place. And then the qualifying were just really the things that cost him. Was in Vegas, we've seen, you know, he should have qualified much better. He had a brilliant car, probably was the faster of the 2 Mercedes, but just gave himself too much to do to try and catch George Russell, so that should have been another win. Abu Dhabi, again, had he qualified better, I think he would have been much higher up, but he drove a brilliant race, and that's what you get with Lewis Hamilton, racecraft. He might have lost it a little bit in qualifying, but his racecraft is absolutely second to none, and why I just really can't wait to see what he does in Ferrari next year. 6th place, George Russell, ahead of his teammate, 6.75. Yeah, decent season overall in the end for him. He started the season slowly, but qualifying was really his strong point. Got that car right up there and then gave him the chance to, you know, try and battle. Austria was the big one. He was just there in the right place and, you know, lapped up the win there. The best race for me was Belgium, you know, rightfully the winner there, but, you know, rules are rules. What a drive to just go and nick that 1st place win. Absolutely tremendous from him. You know, he's got a big season next season. He's got, you know, the team leader of Mercedes, a front running outfit. So, you know, he's really got to just kick the ground running. And he is another one. I think he just needs to just work on that racecraft a little bit. I think he just gets a bit too eager at times. Although I absolutely love it. I've said it all last season. That's one of the why I absolutely love George Russell. He does everything, puts all in on the win, every single race. Does he need to just tone that down a little bit, just read the race a little bit better, a bit like Carlos Sainz does, and that will see probably kick on next season. But excited to see what he can do in Mercedes, leading that team next season. 5th place, Oscar Piastri, 7.04. Slow start to the campaign. Yes, that was probably just down to the car. He got his first win in Hungary, he drove brilliantly. He's shown he's got steel metal. His move that he pulled on Lando Norris on the 2nd chicane, it was brilliant. Another race he should have won. But he was just, yeah, brilliant in Baku, in Monaco. Yeah, really, really good. Monza was a really good one from him for me. End of the season a little bit slowly, but he's shown good progress. The one thing that he really struggled on last 23 was actually his management of the tyres, and he really seemed to get on top of that much better, although that did seem to come back a little bit towards the end of the season where he started to sort of struggle with tyre deg a little bit. But if he can just bottom them things out like he did, show the progress that he showed in 24, McLaren have got two massively competitive drivers, and Norris will be looking over shoulders again for 25 with Piastri. Fourth place, Carlos Sainz, 7.06, just slightly better than Oscar Piastri in the end. He handled his Ferrari rejection absolutely like a megastar, didn't he? He was so professional, just got head down, knew he just had to just show what he's about and give himself a race seat for next season. And boy, did he do that. Australia, when he came back after his appendix, drove absolutely outstanding with just such an amazing drive from him. He was very consistent, and that's just one thing that one of the small things that he brings to the team. His in-race management is probably right up there as the best, isn't it? I don't see many drivers managing races, decisions. He's very clear and precise in exactly what he wants. He tells the teams what he thinks and what he needs, and the team can really play around that. On to Williams. I just can't wait to see how far forward he drives that team next season. They've got a brilliant driver on their hands in Carlos Sainz. He's shown that throughout much of this season. And yeah, should be really good signing for Williams. Shame for him he's not in a top team. Really deserves it, but let's see if someone comes knocking after 25. Third place is a surprise. The champion, Max Verstappen, averaged just 7.56. He won the championship. He wasn't in the best car. Surprised to see him down in this. The averages don't lie. It's what just sort of, it's not what I think now. These are just averages of what he scored over the whole season. Despite some brilliant win, he was rattled though, wasn't he? It's the first time we've seen that from him, when he kind of really didn't need to be Austria, Hungary, Mexico when he did that wild dive. But then he absolutely bounced back. Drives like he pulled off in Spain, Canada, Brazil was just out of this world. Qatar was just fantastic. Baku as well, I've got to say, because he didn't have the best car, but he just followed home. The championship can rival Lando, Norris, damage limitation in every corner. Probably was one of his best campaigns when you look at it overall in races. Like I said, there were just some races which we got badly rated, probably knocked his rating, but drove like a true champion. I've said that so many times with some of his drives. His stock went up in my eyes. He was just absolutely phenomenal. Really going to be the man to beat again next season, no doubt. Second place, Charles Leclerc, 7.75, and well, he went under the radar a bit, and I think that really helped him. There was no high pressure really on him. Brilliant wins for his first win in Monaco in his home race was absolutely outstanding. The Monza win was a bit like what George Russell pulled off in Belgium, where he just made the tyres last. The tyre whisperer, he just absolutely drove phenomenally. Hungary, Mexico, he was outstanding. He's got Lewis Hamilton as his teammate next season, so yeah, he's really put in a performance this season that shows he's going to be right up there, battling real hard with Lewis Hamilton all the way through the 25 campaign. These two, I just can't wait to see them battle. They did battle a little bit throughout 24, and they were just so clean, brilliant racing. You got Ferrari so close to the Constructors' Championship this year in 24. Can he do one better and push him to that next step in 25? If he carries on driving the way he has, and with Lewis Hamilton, really them two really pushing each other, if Ferrari can get their act together and get them a car from race one, is probably what's needed this time, considering, you know, as we've seen throughout most of the season, anybody was winning. Mercedes went on a run of 3 out of 4 wins. McLaren were winning left, right and centre, left some race wins on the table. Ferrari were winning races. You know, we got some surprise ones as well. So, you know, 25 is going to be equivalent and equal to that. I think everyone's given 25 such massive hype, but it's only because 24 was so close. There's a big rule change in 26. Don't expect much to change. Can't wait for them to all get together and see how they get on there. And number one on the average, Lando Norris, should have been world champion. Well, possibly 7.95 on an average rating. The season started slowly for him, and that's really what probably cost him the Drivers' Championship, because he had so much to do. But then there were some races where he was, you know, easily the best car, driver mistakes, and then he just had this lack of belief that was just consistently there, purring in the background, and that just seemed to play on his race starts, where he'd be on pole but wouldn't leave the first lap. Did that far too many times. Even when he was leading and miles in front of it, I think it was Miami, where he still made some, big mistakes that really could have cost him. The walls were close, but he held on. But did that all come together when it really mattered in Abu Dhabi, which was an absolutely amazing champion's drive from me. He had the Ferraris right in his gearbox. Lando, Norris, it was all on his own, wasn't he? His teammate was out, so it was just down to him. He read the race absolutely brilliantly, and I think that was a real, if that race doesn't, I don't know what will build Lando Norris's confidence going into 25 to say that he's the man and he can absolutely take the title charge and be the champion elect for 25. He really should have that now in his locker. He had such a good campaign. He had the whole season. Obviously there was mistakes, and that's something that he probably should work on over this whole winter, to just iron them out and just be the absolute man. He needs to be, because Max Verstappen's shown what he can do, which is an absolute tremendous campaign from him. But Lando Norris, who's going to win the championship for 25? That's the averages for 24. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. Watch out for my next video coming shortly of the 2025 teams driver lineup, who I think is the best and the worst. I am really excited for that video. The season now coming up shortly. We've got the team car reveals, the livery reveals. It's kicking off. 25 is finally nearly here. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you next time.